My part is writing. I am an author of the Elemental Saga, Elemental Heart, Elemental Dragonfire, and Brimstone. And I'm not the only one. Like the YouTubers are a fan collective that stand together, protect, and help one another. I plan on this book being a flagship of a series of books where Fandom Menace authors come together and do the same thing that the YouTubers have done, the culture that they have created, people like Jeremy Griggs, people like Ethan Van Sciver, who come together and support people in their particular niche and help to hold them up under the weight of the constant labels, threats, and bullshit claims that are thrown upon all of us in the fandom.
What's up, guys? Thought I'd do a quick review of a book that appears to have recently come out, or at least was made aware to me. Before I get into this too far, I do need to give a few disclaimers. This book is, supposedly, based on the genesis of the Fandom Menace, something that I was there to witness and had an opportunity to play a part of. I was, in fact, actually friends, or at least friendly, with many that would become well known within the movement. This includes Doomcock, Nerdrotics, and Mecha I talked to Mecha very sparingly on Twitter, and both her and Doomcock still follow me, and I follow them in turn. I haven't really had any interactions with Nerdrotics in a long time, and he unfollowed me on Twitter, which is fair because I unfollowed him before that. Additionally, while I've never personally witnessed Anti-Trekker state he was definitively a part of the Fandom Menace, I do know that he is friends with the Fandom Menace, and initially, many put his avatar on things that were associated with the movement. On that score, Anti-Trekker and I used to be best friends, and we even had a business together. We're no longer in business, and I honestly have no idea if he would associate with them or not. Well, at least at this juncture. Again, he seemed very friendly in the past, and I do think a solid part of his audience is Fandom Menace. I also believe he was on Midnight's Edge at some point, but I'm not sure, I never saw it. I do still watch some of his and Mecha videos. And Anti-Trekker and I still tell our audience to go watch the others' live streams if we're getting off our live stream for that day. Also, while I have a lot of issues with some of the things We Are Starfleet does and says, shout out to my boy Cody on Twitter. Keep arguing in bad faith, buddy. See how far that gets you. I find that I more agree with their ideals than those of modern day Fandom Menace. A lot of the audience, not all, but a lot of the audience of Fandom Menace seem to be more about what they hate than wanting actual change or seeing any kind of positive result. That is just my opinion and based on what I've seen. Anyway, I did want to ensure that I was as transparent as I could be with you guys before breaking this down. Ultimately, I'm here to tell you about the book Fandom Menace, Volume 1, A Fandom Betrayed. Now, this started as an Indiegogo project that raised what appears to be over $11,000. Remember that, $11,000, 5 volumes, this is the first one. In theory, and from what I can tell, the first volume is supposed to give a genesis of the Fandom Menace and what had occurred. It is interesting to say the least. The book is available on Audible for roughly $10 as of the upload of this video and is voiced by one of the peeps from Midnight's Edge. I don't know if it's the Audible version or just due to the writing, but the book can, at times, be pretty hard to understand and follow. The author, Stephen Walton, will be discussing a certain topic and then move into a quote of someone and not tell you that it's a quote until after it's been stated. It makes everything completely confusing. I don't know when he's actually talking or when he's quoting someone. There are also points of the book where he simply uses word salad that if you break down what's being said, you're not getting anything. Additionally, and again this could be because it's Audible, he makes a ton of claims which there are absolutely no citations for, at least that I could find. While I didn't think it was possible, the book feels like someone took a YouTube video and just put that into writing form. Because of that, this literature has some of the faults we see in the medium, including ad homs, slurs, misinformation, and over-exaggeration. On the front of slurs, Stephen will often use the terms such as bullytard and other fanciful iterations of retard to discuss who stands against the Fandom Menace. He also dehumanizes them by referring to them as quote-unquote the SJW. While I do not think that Stephen at all meant any allusions, it is baffling to me that when editing it, he didn't take a look at the term the SJW and see how it could be related to the Nazi German use of the Jew. I suppose he would say that that's silly and he would just use that to discredit any critic that points it out, but it just seems like a lot of trouble, and instead of trying to dehumanize the opposition, he should just beat them with ideas. Also, when looking at the misinformation, at points he will say things that just utterly aren't true, which shows me he either doesn't understand what he's talking about or is misleading. As an example, he states that Mundane Matt's video was taken down to a DMCA. That is true, but he states that it was because of YouTube censorship. Anyone who knows anything about YouTube knows that they have to follow the DMCA. They don't have a choice. His issue is with US federal law. By making it seem like YouTube was siding with the quote-unquote SJW, he is pushing a narrative that is untrue. And the sad part is, I do think there is evidence that YouTube would side with people who are not a part of the Fandom Menace, but by lying like this, you simply make it unbelievable. Looking at the book proper, it begins with a focus on Gamergate. Yeah, Gamergate. He discusses a liberal, if not neoliberal, movement that infests all of Hollywood and the media. Steven states that this is done by social justice warriors, of which he begins to call them the SJW, as I pointed out, but never defines what that is. He never tells us what he means when he says social justice warrior, which is vital in order to solidify who you're talking about, but anyway. To use his dialectic, the SJW would begin to subvert all forms of media. News journalism would be exposed during Gamergate. Now, for those who have actually looked into it, Gamergate was primarily a movement calling out favoritism in gaming journalism. Steven claims that it's basically all of journalism that has this issue, and Gamergate exposes all of it. He goes into a very long-winded explanation of all of the players that were in Gamergate. However, I question some of the facts used, and you honestly would be as well off just typing in YouTube Gamergate explained unbiased, at least in my opinion. Again, I'm not sure I agree with a lot of the points there. The book moves into a chapter called Patient Zero. Here, Steven claims, again without evidence that I can find, that Ronald D. Moore, the production staff, liberal media, and others changed the biological sex of Starbuck as some grand conspiracy to take out others. It was done in order to subvert the original fandom. Anyone who spoke out against the change would be called a sexist. Throughout the book, Steven will state that the true racists are those who are pushing this social justice agenda, just wanting to utilize people as tokens. There lies another problem. He never really seems to clearly state the end goal of this cabal. He literally says that Battlestar Galactica Reimagined was a corrupted version of Battlestar Galactica, by the way, inadvertently praising the Bible while doing that, ironically, and that the elites designed it all this way in order to destroy the old Battlestar Galactica fandom, of which, after their destruction by these elements, the woke people, as well as those who orchestrated it, simply left and let the remains wither. They let Battlestar Galactica die. They destroyed it. He goes on to point out that Ghostbusters 2016 was some form of advanced idea, and it was a prototype film in this regard of the SJW. He claims that Ghostbusters as a franchise was destroyed due to them. Yet, he forgets to mention the 2021 release of a new Ghostbusters movie, but whatever. Throughout all of this, he alludes to how Star Wars fans should recognize what has happened and see it in what's going on. He basically claims there are bad guys who are changing the overall media like some type of virus that will come upon a fandom, eat it completely, and destroy it all. The responses of this book has caused some outrage on Twitter. There are those who don't like the fact that the Fandom Menace is now being called right or alt-right. People even going on Twitter to state that they're liberal or they identify as Democrats, so how exactly is the Fandom Menace a right-leaning proposition? However, if you're reading this book, which proclaims to be about the Fandom Menace and representing it, there is no possible way you can come to any other conclusion. Beyond utilizing far-right tropes like the use of slurs to insult people, Steven openly admits taking the red pill and moving into more conservative spaces. This is stated right before a section where he starts to talk about how he fell in love with geeks and gamers, as well as nerdrotic. Whether done on purpose or not, it does push the narrative that the Fandom Menace is right-leaning, though I don't think I'd go as far to say alt-right. While he uses some of the techniques of the far right, which, to define the far right, it's elements within the right that aren't above using dramatic slurs as a way of insult or shock value, as well as being fairly racist, I don't necessarily find that this book gets into that or goes that far. While I might argue he's a bit on the fringes of far right, I wouldn't say that he's completely within it, nor would I say he's alt-right. I see no evidence of that. The problem is, I don't think Steven is completely off base in his book. I just think it's either poorly constructed or he doesn't really understand what happened within the Fandom Menace. Again, all in my opinion. There are some vestiges of truth in his writing. He only briefly touches on the very legitimate and reasonable reaction of the fans that would come to be known as the Fandom Menace. In the end, this book, unfortunately, just preaches to the choir and would never convince someone who's looking from a sincere, neutral standpoint. In fact, I'd argue it turns people away. I'm actually going to be doing a full-on review of this book in the coming weeks. It's going to take me a while to break everything down. So I'm just going to leave this quick review here. If you're interested, use credits in Audible to get the book. I would not suggest paying full price on Audible, nor would I suggest buying the physical book. But that's my opinion. If you're curious though, I'm going to leave links in the description below. If you've read it, or if you know about the Fandom Menace, tell me about your thoughts. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next Lore Reloaded.